So thanks guys, great performance, and you're holding up this technology, which I do think we want to ask you about in a second. This cutting-edge technology that you've got here. But first of all, let's just get some names. So can you just tell us your name?
I'm Harald Grosskopf from Germany. I'm an electronic musician since the early 70s.
Okay.
And my name is Eberhard Kranemann. I'm one of the founder of Kraftwerk.
Okay.
And I'm playing music since 60 years.
Okay.
I'm just since 55 years.
Okay. Okay, you've got some catching up to do. Obviously, that's going to take years, so we can't get into that right now. Let's just find out. You can come and have a seat on the table if you've got some questions to ask these guys, or if you want to, maybe the conversation will spin in a different direction. We don't know. So my name's Mikey, first of all, and who else have we got around the table? What's your name?
Hi, I'm Matthew Emmett.
Yeah,
I'm John.
Yeah.
Marshall. Oscar.
And come and sit down, come on the camp. It's not often that you get to sit down and have a conversation with one of the founding members of Kraftwerk. So we're quite privileged here. Do come and sit down and ask some questions if you've got. Has anyone got a question that? Come and have a sit. Has anyone got anything that? Yeah, John.
You said a really interesting comment to me earlier about the Stylophone and the fact that it was. Most people think the first song that was played was Space Oddity with David Bowie, right. But that's actually not true, is it?
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the Stylophone.
Yes, I know the Stylophone maybe since 40 or 50 years, because right. Kraftwerk was the first band who played with this. And after Kraftwerk, there was a not so important English musician. His name is David Bowie. He copied this style and tried to make a Stylophone too, but it was not so good. Kraftwerk is better.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't think anyone's going to dispute that, but I guess we're trying to find out where the idea comes from. We've got a new face at the table. What's your name?
I'm Rose. Hi.
Rose, have you got a question? Have you got a...
I've missed the first bit, so you're probably talking about Kraftwerk there.
Oh, well, no, we haven't really said anything yet. We've mentioned this device, the Stylophone, and maybe we can find out a bit more about it. And it's
the origin and how you used it originally.
Okay, so how did the device come about? Can you say a little bit about it?
I just heard about it. I never used it until this moment here.
Okay, so
but he did, in the late 60s or early 70s. And but I knew the instrument, but this is now a new outcome. It is a new product, but it's based on the original Stylophone from 1968.
1968. Okay, can you tell us about how it actually came about and how?
I used it maybe 1970 or 71. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it was the first model. But this is a follower model, and this one is much better. The sound is more intensive. You can make more changes. In reality, this is a I can say something like a children's instrument. Even if it is a primitive instrument, you can make wonderful, easy sounds with it. You have heard it, it's very good sounds coming out.
Okay. More people around the table? Yep.
So we've been speaking about technology, obviously. Would you wish to be born 20 or 30 years later and use the, available gadgets or software, or you would rather, you happy with what you did with the old stuff?
Before coming to you, I'm going to ask Oscar the same question to himself. Would you rather be born 30 years later? I don't know how old you are.
I would rather be born 30 years ago,
Really?
Well,
30 years before?
No, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So 67 years ago.
Okay, you would rather have been born 67, so you would rather have been born earlier. Let's go around the table with this one. Would you rather be born 30 years later, 30 years earlier, 100 years later, 100 years earlier?
I'm happy with where I am.
Okay. And
10 years later.
Okay, 10 years.
Interesting question. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe say 20 years earlier.
Okay.
I think, either 20 later or earlier.
Okay. Either, but not the current situation.
I'm fine with my age, and it was okay. Born in 1949.
Okay.
I am 72 years old. I have been born in 1945. So I'm a very old man, but I'm very young.
Okay, would you rather have been born now and live your life and be old in the 2100s?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
No, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Where I am. That's cool.
Yeah, I'll stick where I am. I'm fine.
Could I keep my memory?
Oh, well, so you want to be born later and also be born now? You want a bit of both in a way?
Yeah, I would like to born like 10 years ago, and then I could come up with like big things like Facebook.
Oh, I see. So you would like to be born. You would like to be born earlier, but actually then be the inventor of all the things that you knew about in the future. Okay, that makes sense. I would say I was thinking a bit of both. Be born in the past and in the future.
I mean, every time has its has its nice parts and bad parts, and we used the technology when we started making music in the early 70s. Synthesizers just appeared, and it had incredible magic, and from nowadays point it was very primitive, but we had to handle it, and in those times it was the future, Of course you have much more possibilities today, but you have the problem of making that choice,
Yeah. Okay, so every technology's got the excitement of just arriving, but with it is all the choices and all the difficulties rolled into it as well. Yeah.
I have an idea. Here is a young man, a very young man, Englishman from Plymouth, and he's a scientist of future. He's a
futurologist.
Future scientist of video artist and sound artist. Maybe he can explain something about it.
Oh, thank you. Put me on the spot.
Okay.
Yes. Promotion for you.
I think today people are more precious about the technology, and therefore they're less likely to be experimental with it.
Right.
But a few years ago, I think people were much more rigorous and
What do you mean
critical.
precious? They're precious about technology.
Less willing to break it and rewire it and hack about with it.
Okay.
So I think today, because it's more expensive,
and so people are not willing to say break open their iPhone.
I think people do, but I think it's less of an invitation to really kind of explore the limits of the technology, and people aren't critically challenging or questioning the technology either. They're just giving it and kind of pass it on, and that's what I would say.
Sorry, what's your name again?
It's Matthew.
Do people agree with what Matthew's saying? Are people less critical, more precious?
I mean, there's the whole maker culture movement, isn't there? And there is a sort of making thing going on as well. And I think that technology is quite cheap.
Yeah.
I think, hacking, like you say, I don't think that's completely the case.
So you're seeing a different side of it. People are fiddling around with stuff a bit more. Are people less critical, more precious?
Yes, I think they're less precious about the technology they have right now, because, for instance, with the smartphones, you get the new one every year, every 2 years. If it breaks, you maybe repair it, not yourself though, but basically so available and cheaper actually. So on the contrary, what you said, I dare to disagree.
People are less precious?
Yes.
But I mean, I think what you want to see, what implicit in what you're saying is that you want to see people like leaving open the technology and rewiring it. Is it possible now with these micro devices, these tiny little things?
Are we talking about hardware or software? Because, I mean, people are developing apps and constantly pushing the boundaries there. So the physical hardware can be evolve and changed as people's technological needs, and people are pushing the boundaries mostly with software and with apps. I mean, and that's really where the interesting development is. And it's not necessarily a physical piece of hardware that's getting moved around.
Go on, what are you going to say, Matthew?
I think the access to this technology has become much more open and accessible, but I think less original with the experimentation, therefore. Cool. But I think the stuff like the Arduino culture, the MakerBots, that's kind of exciting, but I haven't seen anything subversively challenging.
Why do you think that's happening?
Well, that's a bigger question.
Okay. Does anyone else want to answer it? If they agree with what Matthew's saying, if people are not being subversive, why?
Is it that people are being too safe because of commercial pressure and things like that? Like, people think that capitalism innovates, but it kind of just slaps labels on things. It doesn't really innovate. Is it that universities are being squeezed and things and aren't pushing out new products that do new, incredible, amazing things?
I mean, do you think that the culture we're in now is less subversive than perhaps in the 60s or 70s?
I'm a man of the 60s. I began to make this experimental music with Kraftwerk in 1967. This was a very, very wild time. From 67, maybe 10 years. Very intensive. A lot of drugs, alcohol, and boys and girls naked together, making all these wonderful things. Now, it is boring, nothing happens, and it is all commercial, and all people looking television hear commercial music. And 50 years ago, it was only revolution. In Germany, we had a cultural revolution. I think at this time in England there was Beatles and Rolling Stones, and they all said, it was okay, but it was no revolution. It was commercial. And in Germany, it was not commercial. It was against everything. It was a fight against everything. We said shit to everything, and wham, wham, wham. Wow. Yes. Okay. And now nothing. Only commercial things.
What were you going to say, Harald?
I mean, yes, I think it was more, especially in Germany, because our parents were Nazis most of the time. His parents, we were just talking about on the way here, were involved in the building of the V1 rocket which bombed London, and they never, in the family, they never spoke about it. He just found out that they must have been involved. My father was a Nazi party member, and we had these fights, and there was a big split in the generation. So our rebellion was everything from the past was fuck it, even the good German traditions, we didn't want to have anything to do with it. That's why we were able to have a field of unknown, unused field of creativity. That's and we created Krautrock. Krautrock was a bad word from the English music press, because crowds and stuff, and in the beginning nobody, we are no crowd rockers, and this now is a term of cult, which we like and we like to use, But it was a rebellion that maybe because of Trump, the Brexit, and all these right-wing tendencies. In tomorrow we see whether Europe will fall apart, and because of France, we will see that. And I can see dark clouds.
But do we need that darkness in order to have this spirit of revolution? Can we have that spirit of the 60s, of this kind of like rejection of all the bullshit without? Do we have to have the pain of war and darkness to have that?
No, we don't have to have it. It happens, and we will see. And hopefully it doesn't happen, because creativity can be done under every circumstances. But from our experience in the past, usually a dark historical situation puts out a lot of art,
Right.
The 20s after the World War I, and hopefully it never will be repeated. History most of the time will be repeated in the second time as a fake, or as a, how to say that,
a farce.
Yeah, a farce. Yeah.
Okay. Where do we want to go with this? What do we want to talk about? More questions about the music? You want to talk about revolution?
Well, I think the revolution will happen because, with globalization, I mean, there is a right-wing thing to it and the populism, but also, the left and the creative kind of in terms of austerity and not having access to things because you don't have the money. So then you come up with more creative solutions. And I think things, that's the way communication goes, doesn't it? It starts small, goes gigantic. You had broadcasters, and now, you've got like millions of channels. Radio went the same way. You got internet radio. And I think like with apps and things like that, using the person more instead of the technology.
We could be on the verge of a new era of creativity.
We could, but I think the problem is that in previous times when you get this polarization and you get this rebellion, we haven't had, as we were saying earlier, everybody's so dulled down and everything's so commercial and everybody is so caught up. There's so much social media and so much information technology out there. People's minds are overwhelmed by it and people just switch off to it. So when things that are serious and really important, which polarize and unite people in rebellion or in some sort of action, happen, at the moment, I think that's not going to happen because this generation are so used to seeing vanilla minutiae every day, and they just don't get it. They don't understand, and they're not going to.
So it's a vanilla generation.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to say it.
Is it a vanilla generation that are we going to be too distracted? This is what we were talking about earlier on. Too distracted to actually be creative and to connect.
I mean, I do kind of agree, but I think what you said applies to the mainstream, because actually I think there's an immense amount of creativity in young people, but it doesn't make it because of the commercial system on top of the art world.
The vanilla.
And but the kind of problem is that it's not that it's not there, it's that it's not given a voice. And I think if a generation is criticised, those voices are going to be diminished even further, because people are just going to switch off to all forms of creativity from young people.
So it's going to be on the fringes. Just want to say to those people, come and pull your chair closer, and those people standing up, grab a chair, come in and come and get involved in this. There's another chair over there.
I think what it needs is politicians that decide, when we. The political side of technology needs such socialization, and this is you have a lack of socialization, and the problem will be that this will separate rich and poor more and more if the society don't decide that we need socialism in technology.
So actually, society's got to decide that this technology has to be given to more people, and this technology needs to be distributed.
I was going to say, it's the technology is interesting, but it's what you do with the technology. It's only a tool. So I think what you were saying about the experimentation, the filters kind of blocking that, it comes back to that kind of criticality about what you do with it as a tool to express and articulate ideas. And people are becoming so immune to so much noise, it's a matter of trying to cut through that with some sort of something to say that's interesting.
Okay, I mean, is the problem that the technology that people are not experimenting with technology, or is the problem that people are not noticing that experimentation that's happening on a very small scale and it's not being seen by the wider community? A bit of both, okay. So do people agree with this? I mean, is there a way to communicate the experimentation to get people experimenting more? How do we do it? How do we foster this culture of experimentation?
Events like this. More events like this.
Okay.
Stuff that.
It's one for Tony.
Yeah, it's about inspiring people, and I guess that's what artists do. And then, if artists experiment with technology in such a way that then the viewer of the art can actually be involved with it, so it's like a sort of shared experimentation, then that can only inspire more and more people, and kind of the message gets out there, as it were.
Any good art engages people and sparks something in them. So anything that sparks an interest and a creative output from somebody else or an emotion is a positive thing.
I mean, do you agree with that? Is there events like this that actually?
Yeah, of course I do, Mikey. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so more events like this. Is it? Do we know what we've got here? That it is a kind of a potential kind of influencer. Do people see this event in this way? Yeah.
I think this is good what you are doing now here. This is very, very good, because some minutes before I said, it is everything is now too commercial. No one is experimenting with new things, and in this place new things are happening because you are using the new technology. Not only commercial, and this is very good. You make experiments with new technology. This is the same thing is Matthew Emmett is doing, and the same thing are we doing. This is very good that we come together. German people, English people, people from the whole world come together to work in new ideas with new technology, and this is a good test bed. I don't know whether it will be a success.
Okay, so. I mean, I think everyone would agree we've got to come together. We've got to experiment and share our ideas and make that happen. And it can't be commercial. Or does that? I mean, do people agree with that? Why does commerce actually stop that experimentation happening? Does it actually create this vanilla culture that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a monopoly and there's a bit of a greed out there. There's people always want something for themselves, and events like this are about giving back and for everybody to collaborate. And there's an awful lot of, I'm going to be cynical. There's a lot of projects where it's all about the money and about what's in it for me, and there's a lot of that, and there's not in the wider social aspect of what's in it for everybody, or what's in it, and how can we help each other. So it's part of that whole self-centered culture.
That's the issue with the commercial side. It's too selfish. It's too much about greed and not about how can we help the wider world.
And that's sort of giving me an idea. It's like, it's because of the sort of vanilla mainstream culture, is there a way of incentivizing not artists or funding bodies or anything, but the consumers to actually do more exploring? Because if rather than click on the top 10 YouTube links, they actually bothered going a few links down, they might find the stuff that is a bit more experimental and interesting. But how do you incentivize people to navigate and explore and not just take the top level of things when that's where the money goes? I mean,
all right. How do you incentivize the consumer to explore more? Tony, you were going to say something then?
It's a difficult one with this commerce situation. Obviously, commerce facilitates a lot. Money enables things. I mean, I've been organising these Kinetica events for 10 years, which has basically been artists experimenting with technology. That's exhibitions, events, performances, and so on. We've kind of done that on a very kind of non-commercial basis, but that's obviously very difficult. But yes,
So you need to actually make money to make that.
The money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
But of course, I mean, we have kind of wrestled with this a bit because we need sponsorship, we need money from somewhere, but then often the brand or the company wants to kind of have their sort of input, and maybe that even in terms of actually seeping into the artwork that's produced and so on. So there's kind of a difficulty there clearly that I don't really know what the answer is.
So you're kind of in a way guiding a tightrope between getting these companies in and getting them to actually make it happen, and actually not making it so. Oh, it's Vodafone Kinetica or something like that, or can you...
Exactly. I mean, we haven't done that at all, but then at the same time, we maybe haven't done as much as we could have done if we'd had that kind of backing and that kind of sponsorship and so on. So, but then it wouldn't be the same thing, would it? And that's not really what we're about. So.
There is a very fine line in what he's saying. So selling yourself or dying poor, and never showing yourself to the world. So it's a fine line as an artist or someone who organizes.
I think everyone can relate to that. That sort of like, there's the people with the money that want to make money. They want to use you, and you've got to use them. And then there's what you actually want to do in this kind of. This vision of the world where everything's done under artistic values, and I think certainly there's a kind of middle line, or there's a path that you take between those two competing things. I think everyone can relate to that around the table, probably.
I don't know who said it. If you are commercially successful, some artist said it, you got to think about what you have done wrong.
Okay, all right. Well, but probably doesn't apply to any of us here. Any commercially successful people around the table? Okay. We're all doing it right. Give ourselves a round of applause. I never realised before how much we've got right. Okay, so where do we want to take this conversation on to? Do we want to talk about the pressures between commerce and the man, sticking it to the man even? Do we want to talk about the future of the technology, this underground scene? Does it have to be underground? Do we want to talk about how to get the mainstream more interested in what's going on here? It's kind of up to you. Where do you want to take this conversation?
Just a comment on the underground. I feel like, although I want more exposure for people in the underground, I think some people kind of get off on being obscure. I think there's the whole hipster movement of being like, oh, you won't have heard of this band, and kind of wanting to know something that other people don't. And I reckon maybe there's a bit of moderation there, because you don't want to make everything too easy to find, otherwise it doesn't reward the curious as well, which I know is the opposite of what I just said earlier, but like...
Well, it is in sense...
There is a sense of that, because it's like when you said you went to the Hacienda, it's like when you went to the Hacienda, did you go in the late 80s, or did you go in the early 90s when it was horrific? What was, so it's like that thing of what are you... At what stage of an arc of a thing, or is it worth getting involved in it at? But again, and where does it go when it gets into the mainstream, and how does it get into the mainstream? It's a very big question.
Okay. Anything on this side? You've not said much so far. Any thoughts about? I mean, the whole point of Talkaoke is up to you to. If you don't want to say anything, that's fine. No, I'm not. I'm not going to. Have you got something to say? Yeah.
Well, nothing really. No.
Yeah. Do you regard yourself as in the underground and the mainstream?
I would say, well, basically, I'm a designer, and we are working on technology. And most of the technology we've worked on artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And we are working on technology that would be able to develop itself.
Right.
And when it comes to creativity, it's kind of difficult to like.
So it's self-creativity. Okay, let's just get some final thoughts from Harald and Ivan.
Yeah, it was nice being in this circle. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.